Hello, and welcome to episode 45 of Sir Astro's Star Wars painting series. In this episode, we're going to paint Vinto from the Jabba's Realm expansion from Fantasy Flight Games' Star Wars Imperial Assault. Let's take a look at the painting stages. I've chosen to prime the figure in black, followed with some grey and white zenithal highlights applied from above. We'll then apply the base colours, and I'll be blocking in the main areas of light and shade for the skin to achieve a high contrast look. We can then shade the various sections to bring some depth to the shadows, followed with some highlights that will include some extreme reflections for the metallic areas. Our finishing touches will include painting the eyes as well as providing a scenic base. Let's begin with the base colours. To achieve a nice high contrast look for the skin, I'm going to begin by preparing some Deathworld Forest for the shadow tone, and some Elysian Green for the mid-tone. For the areas of highlight, I'm going to mix roughly equal measures of Moot Green, Yriel Yellow, and white. Starting with the shadow tone, I'm now going to use these three colours to paint the skin, blocking in the main areas of light and shade as I go. Adjacent tones can either be wet blended on the miniature or simply layered one on top of the other. We'll be adding some final highlights here later on. We can now paint the clothes, and I'm using Rakarth Flesh for the top. For the trousers, I'm using Stegadon Scale Green mixed with a little Deathworld Forest. I'm now mixing 2 parts Rhinox Hide and 1 part Mournfang Brown, which I'm using for all of the areas of dark leather. This means the boots, holster, belt and straps. For the inside of the overcoat, I'm using Mephiston Red, darkened with some Stegadon Scale Green. And for the outside of the overcoat, I'm using a 2-to-1 mix of XV88 and Mournfang Brown. For the areas of metal, I've chosen to use non-metallic paints to give me full control over the highlights, so I'm providing a base tone using a 3-to-2 mix of black and dark sea blue. However, you could use any of the simpler approaches to painting metal explored in this series if you wish, in which case you could now provide a base coat using your metallic paint of choice. One of the reasons I've chosen the non-metallic approach for Vinto is to allow me to have some fun with the highlights on the pauldrons in a while. We can also use this for the eyes. We're now ready to add some shade. I'm going to start by shading the overcoat and areas of brown leather with a 4-to-1 mix of Agrax Earthshade and Druchii Violet, thinned with a little Lahmian medium. I'm now thinning this with some additional Lahmian medium in a separate well and shading the pale top. Next I'm going to mix a couple of drops of Drakenhof Nightshade into the overcoat shade and apply this to the legs. Finally, I'm creating a 3-to-1 mix of Athonian Camoshade and Coelia Greenshade, once again thinned with a little Lahmian medium. I'm then using this to shade the skin. Notice that I'm being selective with my application here to avoid over-darkening the highlights on the head. With the shading complete, we're now ready to apply the highlights. I'm going to begin by highlighting the overcoat, so I'm reapplying the original XV88 and Mournfang Brown base tone to prepare the area for the upper highlights. I'm now going to lighten this with some Ogryn Camo in a few stages. Here's my lightest tone. This is entirely optional, but I've also chosen to mix some Stegadon Scale Green and Naggaroth Night into the base tone, and use this to add some further interest to the shadows. I'm applying this quite thinly in a couple of layers. These purplish-bluish tones contrast nicely with the more yellowish highlights. I'm now going to highlight the underside of the cloak by mixing some Evil Sun Scarlet into the original Mephiston Red and Stegadon Scale Green base tone. I'm now increasing the level of red. I'm now using pure Evil Sun's Scarlet. For the trousers, I'm once again using Ogryn Camo to lighten the original base tone of Stegadon Scale Green and Deathworld Forest. For the areas of leather, I'm using Balor Brown to lighten the original Rhinox Hide and Mournfang Brown base tone. For the pauldrons, I'm going to essentially use a gradient from the black and dark sea blue base tone to pure white to create my highlights. I'm going to prepare the off-black and white tones in the palette, along with an initial intermediate grey tone in between, although I will be freely mixing a range of greys alongside this as I work. I'm starting by blocking in bold highlights in pure white, and you may wish to take inspiration from the wonderful character art whilst you do this. I might also create some slightly darker highlights with a pale grey. With the main highlights blocked in, I'm now going to create some rough transitions by brushing some grey over the border of the highlights. Different shades of grey can be used to create the transitions, but we don't necessarily need seamless gradients to create the effect we're after. I'm now playing around quite freely, making some final adjustments to the size and intensity of the reflections until I have a look that I'm happy with. We'll be returning to add some colour here in a moment, but first I'm going to use these grey tones to also highlight the other metallic areas on the miniature, including the guns. I'm now going to glaze some colour onto the pauldrons to add interest, and also to give the impression of light being reflected from the surrounding environment. You could try whatever colours you like for this, and could even use thinned paint rather than a pre-made glaze or shade as I'm doing. I'm going to begin by brushing some Lamenters Yellow onto some of the reflections. I'm now applying some Waywatcher Green, especially for the reflection nearest the face. For other areas, I'm trying some Druchii Violet. These colours can also be overlapped to create gradients within the reflections. Here, for example, I'm shifting from purple to yellow. I might reintroduce a little pure white to ensure we're maintaining maximum contrast. You could also tint the reflections elsewhere on the miniature if you like. With the metal areas complete, I'm now going to add some final highlights to the skin, starting with the Moot Green, Yriel Yellow and White mix that we used earlier. I'm brightening this further by mixing in a little extra white. Here I'm using the side of the brush to more easily pick out the raised texture. With the highlights complete, we're now ready to add some finishing touches. I'm now going to paint the row of red lights on the pauldrons, and although using plain Mephiston Red for this would be fine, for the left pauldron I've chosen to slightly darken the red with some Stegadon scale green. This is to make them better stand out against the light reflections. For the right shoulder pad, which is darker, I want the lights to be as bright as possible, so I'm going to first lay down some pure white. And then applying some pure Mephiston Red on top. Next I'm going to paint the eyes, and I'm starting by applying a low reflection to each one using Balor Brown. I'm then introducing some purple to the upper area using Naggaroth Night mixed with a little white. I'm now boosting the lower highlight by mixing some Yriel Yellow into the Balor Brown. Next I'm adding a bold highlight of pure white to the upper left of each eye, making corrections as I go. I'm now boosting the lower highlight further by mixing a little white into the yellow and brown mix. All that remains now is to protect the miniature with a matte spray, and as usual I'm rebasing the hero with a scenic base. And this completes Vinto. Thank you for watching. If you're enjoying the series, then do please let me know by hitting the like button and subscribing for more. As always, I must express my gratitude to the kind patrons who are funding this series. These videos are only made possible with their support. Join me again soon as we continue painting miniatures from Star Wars Imperial Assault. Happy painting!